Sarah arrived at the naval base just as the early morning fog was lifting, giving the entire facility a quiet, almost mysterious atmosphere. The sun had not fully risen, and the first rays of light reflected off the metallic surfaces of the buildings and vehicles scattered around the compound. Everything about the place felt precise and organized, as if every person, every vehicle, and every piece of equipment had its exact place in the world. For someone like Sarah, who had spent years in the SEAL teams, this kind of environment felt familiar, almost comforting. She moved through the gates with her ID checked quickly by the guards, her presence calm and confident. Unlike the new recruits who might fidget or glance nervously around, Sarah walked steadily, her posture perfect, her eyes scanning the area with quiet awareness. Inside, the base was alive with activity. Officers were hurrying between buildings, carrying reports and devices, while groups of enlisted personnel were performing drills, their movements sharp and disciplined. The air carried a mix of smells: fuel from the vehicles, the sharp tang of metal, and the faint aroma of coffee from the small mess hall. Sarah didn't let any of it distract her. Her focus was on the briefing she had come to attend, a high-level meeting with senior SEAL officers, including Admiral Thompson, a man whose reputation preceded him. He was known to be brilliant but intimidating, a commander who had risen through the ranks through sheer skill, courage, and a strict sense of discipline. Sarah had been on countless missions, both domestic and overseas, and she had faced situations that tested the limits of human endurance. Yet, no matter how tense or dangerous the scenario, she always carried herself with calm determination. Today was different, though. This was not a combat mission but a professional gathering. Yet the stakes were high. Among the assembled officers would be men and women she respected deeply, and first impressions mattered, even if her reputation often preceded her. As she walked through the hallways toward the briefing room, she passed by rows of lockers, each with personal items neatly arranged. There were framed photographs of family members, certificates of achievement, and small tokens of pride that spoke volumes about the dedication and commitment of the men and women who worked there. Sarah paused for a brief moment, noting the contrast between the personal touches and the overall efficiency of the base. It was a place where discipline and humanity coexisted, each enhancing the other. She finally reached the briefing room, a large space filled with polished tables, high-tech equipment, and monitors displaying maps and operational data. Officers were already seated, some reviewing notes, others quietly discussing strategies in low voices. Sarah entered quietly, nodding politely to a few familiar faces. Her reputation had preceded her in some circles, but many of the officers she would meet today had not yet seen her in person. To them, she was just another uniformed figure entering the room. Her calm demeanor did not go unnoticed. Some of the officers exchanged glances, curious about the newcomer who moved with such assuredness. It was a subtle kind of confidence, not loud or demanding, but undeniably present. It drew attention, the kind of presence that made people instinctively respectful without anyone saying a word. Sarah took a seat at the side of the room, not seeking to dominate the conversation but prepared to contribute when necessary. She had learned long ago that true respect in the military came not from demanding it, but from earning it through competence and quiet authority. Admiral Thompson, seated near the head of the room, finally noticed her. He was a man who had seen countless officers and enlisted personnel pass through his briefings, and he often made quick judgments based on appearances and posture. Today, he assumed, would be no different. He watched as Sarah settled in, noting her calm yet alert movements, the way her eyes scanned the room as if taking mental notes of every detail. There was something unusual about her, though he couldn't quite place it. She was not new to the military world, he could tell, but he assumed she was likely a junior officer, perhaps there to observe or assist. The room slowly filled, and the briefing began with standard formalities. Charts were displayed on the monitors, operational updates were shared, and officers discussed upcoming training schedules and mission details. Sarah listened attentively, her mind not just absorbing the information but analyzing it. She had a knack for noticing patterns, anticipating challenges, and quietly preparing solutions in her head before anyone else even spoke. This ability had made her invaluable in past missions, and though she kept it understated, it was impossible to hide entirely. Even as the meeting progressed, she remained poised, exuding the quiet confidence of someone who had faced far greater challenges than a briefing room. Her experience in high-pressure environments gave her a unique advantage. She could remain calm while others might be nervous or distracted. For the officers who were paying attention, there was a sense that Sarah was someone not to underestimate, someone whose presence carried weight beyond what her uniform alone might suggest. As the morning light grew brighter and the briefing moved into operational specifics, Sarah's calm observation continued. She wasn't there to impress anyone with words or gestures. She let her experience speak for itself. Every movement, every glance, every note she took was deliberate, conveying the message that she was prepared, competent, and ready for anything. And though no one in the room yet realized the true extent of her achievements, there was an undeniable aura about her that set her apart from the others. The briefing was in full swing when Admiral Thompson's eyes finally focused on Sarah. He had been scanning the room, noting familiar faces, assessing officers he already knew, and preparing to guide the discussion. Then he saw her, standing quietly to the side, attentive but seemingly unassuming. She wore the standard uniform, perfectly pressed, with her hair neatly secured, a picture of professionalism. Yet, in his mind, she didn't seem like someone who would command authority or have battlefield experience. That assumption, he would soon realize, was entirely wrong. With a half-smile and a playful tone, the Admiral leaned slightly toward a nearby officer and asked loudly enough for Sarah to hear, "So, what's your rank, sailor?" His voice carried a teasing quality, the kind of joke that was common among officers to break the tension during long briefings. It wasn't meant to insult anyone. Rather, it was a light-hearted jab aimed at someone he presumed was junior. He expected Sarah to respond politely, perhaps with a slight chuckle, and then carry on with her duties. He did not expect her reaction to challenge his assumptions. Sarah turned toward him, her posture remaining composed, and her expression calm but unwavering. She could sense the teasing nature of his question immediately. Having been in countless high-pressure situations, she was no stranger to people underestimating her, especially men who assumed they could gauge her abilities from appearance alone. She chose not to react with anger or sarcasm. Instead, she smiled faintly, the kind of smile that suggested both politeness and quiet confidence. Without saying a word, she gave the impression that her experience and authority far exceeded what the Admiral assumed. Around them, the room was alive with the quiet hum of conversation and the tapping of pens on notepads. Officers were taking notes, reviewing mission updates, and discussing tactical strategies. Some glanced at the exchange between Sarah and the Admiral, curious about the newcomer who had entered the room so quietly yet seemed to command attention effortlessly. There was a subtle tension in the air, not hostile, but noticeable. A moment where appearances and reality were about to collide. The Admiral, still smiling at his own joke, leaned back slightly in his chair. He was used to commanding respect, and his humor often broke the ice with younger officers. But as Sarah didn't respond in the way he anticipated, a flicker of curiosity crossed his face. There was no embarrassment or discomfort in her demeanor, no eagerness to assert herself. Instead, there was a steady calm, a confidence that spoke louder than any words. For someone like the Admiral, this was unusual. He was accustomed to officers reacting quickly, either with nervousness or quick wit. Sarah's calm presence was different. It demanded attention without needing to demand it. Sarah's mind, meanwhile, was focused. She wasn't there to play games or prove herself to anyone. She understood her own capabilities and her own worth. In her eyes, a joke like that, aimed at someone of lesser rank, was harmless. But for someone like her, it was inconsequential. She had faced real dangers, missions where lives hung in the balance, and challenges far greater than a playful jab in a briefing room. To her, this was just another moment to observe, to understand the dynamics of the room, and to continue her work without unnecessary drama. Yet, even in her quietness, she made an impact. The subtle way she held herself, the calm focus in her eyes, and the quiet authority in her posture communicated far more than words ever could. Those who were paying attention, the other officers, the enlisted personnel nearby, began to notice. There was something remarkable about her presence. It was not loud or demanding, but it was undeniable. In a room full of experienced SEALs and officers, that quiet command was unusual and intriguing. It was the kind of presence that made people instinctively respect someone without knowing their full history. Admiral Thompson, still chuckling softly at his own joke, finally took in the full picture. He saw not a junior officer, but someone who carried herself with a level of discipline, focus, and calm authority that was unusual even among experienced personnel. For a brief moment he paused, reconsidering his assumptions. He had underestimated her completely, and yet, there was still no outward sign from Sarah that she sought recognition or approval. Her confidence was quiet, earned, and entirely genuine. The room continued its routine, but the energy subtly shifted. Officers who had glanced at Sarah earlier now watched with more attention, curiosity mixing with a quiet admiration. They could sense that she was someone extraordinary, though they did not yet understand the full extent of her experience. Even the Admiral, who had thought he knew every officer in the room and could read them like a book, realized he had been caught off guard. This simple question, meant as a light-hearted joke, had unintentionally revealed a blind spot in his judgment. A reminder that appearances often deceive, and true authority is often hidden. Sarah, aware of the attention but unaffected by it, returned her focus to the briefing materials. She reviewed the charts and notes before her, thinking about upcoming missions, strategies, and operational details. Her mind was sharp, analytical, and ready. While others were distracted by the social dynamics of the room, she was preparing herself for the work at hand, quietly demonstrating that real expertise does not rely on recognition or validation from others. It relies on preparation, skill, and composure. The brief moment of tension, initiated by a playful joke, quietly passed. Yet its impact lingered. It was the first hint of the lesson that would unfold later. Never underestimate someone based on appearance, gender, or initial assumptions. Sarah's calm confidence, paired with her exceptional experience, would soon turn this small moment into a lesson for the entire room, especially for the Admiral who had jokingly questioned her rank. The room was still buzzing with the quiet hum of conversations, papers rustling, and officers exchanging tactical ideas when a small, almost unnoticed movement caught Admiral Thompson's attention. Sarah had shifted slightly, reaching into her sleeve to adjust her jacket. In that moment, a glimpse of her forearm appeared, and the Admiral's eyes widened. There it was, a tattoo. Not just any tattoo, but a highly detailed insignia. A sniper symbol, etched with precision and care. The design spoke volumes about the wearer's skill, training, and operational history. For those who understood the military symbols, it was a mark that carried prestige and respect, earned only through years of rigorous training and proven experience in the field. At first, the Admiral thought he must be mistaken. Perhaps it was just a decorative design or something symbolic without real significance. But as he looked closer, the intricate details confirmed what he had momentarily doubted. This was a professional mark, a literal emblem of mastery in marksmanship and battlefield operations. His mind raced. He had underestimated her entirely. The playful joke about her rank moments earlier now seemed almost embarrassing. Here was a woman who had not only survived the grueling challenges of SEAL training, but had also distinguished herself as an elite sniper, a role that commanded the utmost respect. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Though many officers were still engaged in their own tasks, the Admiral could feel a moment of silent acknowledgement passing through him. He had always prided himself on recognizing talent and experience, yet here he was, caught off guard by someone he had assumed was junior or inexperienced. His posture changed almost instinctively. The humor that had lingered on his face faded, replaced by a look of surprise, respect, and perhaps a hint of humility. Sarah, unaware at first of the Admiral's reaction, continued with her routine. She had learned long ago not to seek recognition for accomplishments earned through effort and dedication. To her, the tattoo was not a decoration but a symbol of countless missions, long nights of training, and moments where lives depended on her precision and skill. It represented the culmination of years of relentless discipline, extreme focus, and the courage to face danger head-on. She did not flaunt it, yet its presence was undeniable to those who knew what to look for. As the Admiral's gaze lingered on the tattoo, he began to recall the significance of the insignia. The sniper emblem was not handed out lightly. It required mastery of marksmanship beyond standard expectations, the ability to operate independently in hostile environments, and the tactical acumen to make split-second decisions under extreme pressure. Each line of the tattoo told a story of training, precision, and proven effectiveness. It symbolized a level of expertise that far exceeded ordinary recognition, a rank and skill set that commanded immediate respect. The realization hit him hard. This was the same woman he had jokingly asked about her rank moments ago, assuming she was there in a minor or supporting role. The irony was striking. Here she was, a person whose achievements outstripped not only what he expected but also what many in the room would assume based on appearance alone. The Admiral, a man who had seen countless officers rise and fall, suddenly recognized that he had misjudged her entirely. It was a humbling moment, one that reminded him that experience and skill often remain hidden until observed carefully. Around the room, others began to notice the subtle change in the Admiral's demeanor. His eyes were fixed on Sarah for a moment longer than necessary, and there was a slight shift in the energy of the space. Those who were perceptive enough began to wonder why he had paused. Some exchanged quiet glances, intrigued by what seemed to command the Admiral's full attention. Though no one had yet realized the full story behind the tattoo, there was an unspoken acknowledgement that Sarah was no ordinary officer. Her presence alone carried a weight that the room could sense, even before they knew the details. Sarah finally looked down at her materials, still unaware of the ripple her tattoo had caused. To her, the work at hand was what mattered: strategies, operational planning, and ensuring missions were executed with precision. Recognition or attention was secondary. Her focus was on competence, preparation, and execution. Yet, without a word, her authority and expertise had already made their mark. The tattoo, a symbol of her achievements, silently spoke for her in a way that no introduction or verbal acknowledgement ever could. The Admiral shifted in his seat, his previous amusement replaced by contemplation. He realized that a simple joke had almost cost him an opportunity to show proper respect. This woman, Sarah, had earned every bit of her status and expertise through experience, discipline, and undeniable skill. It was a lesson in humility, a reminder that true merit is earned, often quietly, and not always immediately visible to those who judge too quickly. From that moment on, the Admiral's attitude toward her subtly changed. He no longer saw her as a junior officer or someone to tease lightly. Instead, he recognized the depth of her experience and the quiet authority she carried. The room, unknowingly, had witnessed the first signs of a pivotal moment, one that would soon lead to admiration, respect, and a lasting lesson for everyone present about recognizing skill, experience, and the true measure of leadership. The tattoo was more than ink. It was a silent statement, a badge of honor that conveyed stories of resilience, courage, and unmatched precision. And for the Admiral, it had transformed what began as a casual joke into a powerful realization. Never underestimate someone based on appearances alone. The moment the Admiral's eyes fell on Sarah's sniper tattoo, a quiet shift began in the room. At first, it was almost imperceptible. Just a subtle change in his posture, a small pause in his movements, but it was enough to catch the attention of the nearby officers. The Admiral, who had moments ago been teasing Sarah with a light-hearted joke about her rank, now sat upright, his expression transforming from casual amusement to genuine respect and surprise. He realized, in an instant, that he had underestimated her entirely. The woman he had assumed to be a junior officer was, in fact, someone whose skill and experience outshone many in the room, including himself. Sarah, ever calm and composed, remained focused on the briefing. She did not react to the sudden attention or the admiring glances she now received. For her, the work at hand was more important than recognition. She had spent years in training and missions where survival and precision mattered more than ego or status. The tattoo on her forearm was not meant to impress anyone. It was a mark of her hard-earned accomplishments, a silent symbol of countless hours of practice, dangerous missions, and disciplined preparation. Yet, in that room, it spoke volumes without a single word. The officers around her began to notice the change in the Admiral. Some glanced at each other, whispering quietly, sensing that something extraordinary had just occurred. There was a tension in the air, not uncomfortable but charged with curiosity and intrigue. The Admiral's reaction was subtle but unmistakable. He was no longer treating Sarah as a subordinate to tease. Instead, he was processing the realization that she was not only capable but highly accomplished, a sniper whose experience could rival, and perhaps surpass, many of the officers present. For the Admiral, the transformation was both humbling and enlightening. He had spent decades in the SEALs, trained countless officers, and assumed he could evaluate competence at a glance. Yet here he was, confronted with a living reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Sarah's calm confidence, her professional composure, and the tattoo that symbolized her hard-earned rank and skill were proof that true authority is often quiet and understated. It does not demand attention, it commands it naturally. As the realization sank in, the Admiral instinctively adjusted his posture. He straightened his back and slightly lifted his chin, almost as if standing at attention, not because he was being commanded but because respect had become unavoidable. His eyes followed Sarah's movements, noticing the way she read her notes, reviewed strategies, and absorbed every detail of the briefing with unwavering focus. It was clear that her competence extended far beyond what he had initially imagined. This was a woman who had faced extreme challenges, whose judgment and precision could alter the outcome of high-risk missions, and whose leadership was quietly formidable. The shift in the Admiral's demeanor did not go unnoticed by the other officers. Military culture emphasizes respect for experience and achievement, and those who understood the meaning of the sniper tattoo began to react with subtle recognition. Heads turned, eyes followed her quietly, and a sense of admiration began to ripple through the room. Sarah's presence, which had previously blended into the background for some, now demanded attention. She had not spoken a word yet, but her authority was unmistakable. The tattoo, a symbol of skill, dedication, and earned respect, had communicated more than any introduction or verbal announcement could. Sarah, despite the growing attention, continued to focus on her work. She adjusted her notes, reviewed the operational charts on the table, and mentally prepared for the discussions ahead. She understood the dynamics of the room perfectly. The Admiral's reaction, while significant, was not her concern. She had learned that true respect is earned through actions and expertise, not through social interactions or recognition alone. Yet, even in her quiet focus, she radiated an aura of authority that could not be ignored. The Admiral, now fully aware of his misjudgment, made a subtle gesture. He nodded slightly, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging her experience and skill. It was a quiet act of respect, but one that carried immense weight. Around him, other officers began to take note, realizing that the woman they had overlooked might, in fact, be one of the most skilled individuals present. Murmurs of curiosity and admiration rippled through the room, though no one spoke loudly. In a space filled with trained professionals, subtle signals often convey more than words, and Sarah's presence, coupled with the Admiral's acknowledgement, sent a clear message. She was someone to be respected, someone whose expertise could not be ignored. The entire episode served as a lesson in humility, not just for the Admiral but for everyone present. It demonstrated that skill and achievement are not always immediately visible, and that assumptions based on appearances can lead to underestimating those who have truly earned their place. Sarah's quiet confidence, her focus on the task at hand, and the visible symbol of her achievements, the sniper tattoo, created a moment that would linger in the minds of those who witnessed it. As the briefing continued, the room's energy subtly shifted. Officers began to treat Sarah with a new level of respect, watching her, listening more attentively, and acknowledging the experience she brought. The Admiral, once casual and playful, now exuded genuine admiration. In that moment, Sarah had not only revealed her own expertise but had also reminded everyone present that true authority is earned, quiet, and undeniable. Her presence had transformed the room without a single word, leaving a lasting impression that would resonate long after the meeting ended. The realization had settled in Admiral Thompson's mind, and for the first time, he felt a wave of humility wash over him. He had made a mistake, a small, seemingly harmless joke about Sarah's rank, but it had revealed his own assumptions and underestimation. What he thought was playful teasing now felt like a lapse in judgment. She wasn't just another officer. She was a highly skilled SEAL sniper, a veteran whose accomplishments could outshine many of the people in the room, including himself. The weight of that understanding pressed on him, and he knew he had to act, not out of obligation, but out of respect for someone who had truly earned it. He stood slowly, drawing the attention of those nearby. The officers around him noticed the shift immediately. The room had already been subtly aware of Sarah's presence and the significance of her tattoo, but now the highest-ranking officer present was changing his behavior in real time. The silence that followed his movement was telling. All eyes in the briefing room turned toward Sarah, though she remained focused on the documents in front of her, entirely unaware of the impact she had just made. The Admiral's footsteps were measured as he approached, a subtle sign that he was preparing to acknowledge her formally, not as a formality but as a genuine act of respect. When he reached her side, Sarah looked up briefly, her eyes calm but alert. She could see the change in his expression immediately. Gone was the playful smirk that had accompanied his earlier joke. Instead, there was respect, tempered by humility, and perhaps a hint of self-reflection. The Admiral paused for a moment, giving Sarah the space to acknowledge him, but it was clear he intended to speak first. He straightened his back, his voice steady but carrying the weight of sincerity. "Sarah," he began, his tone respectful, "I owe you an apology. My earlier question was meant as a joke, but I can see now that it was completely misplaced. Your experience and skill are remarkable, and I should not have assumed anything based on appearances." Sarah nodded slightly, a quiet acknowledgement rather than an overreaction. She understood the dynamics perfectly. For her, respect was not about public recognition or praise, it was about acknowledgement of expertise and merit. She had spent years operating in environments where respect was earned through performance, precision, and leadership under pressure, not through ceremonial words. Yet, even though she remained composed, there was a subtle smile that acknowledged the Admiral's honesty and the genuine respect he was offering. Around them, the room's atmosphere changed. Other officers noticed the interaction, seeing their leader act with humility and integrity. It was a lesson in leadership that went beyond military protocol. It was about recognizing merit, correcting assumptions, and valuing the contributions of every team member. Sarah's calm response amplified the effect, demonstrating that true authority does not require fanfare or attention. Her presence, coupled with the Admiral's acknowledgement, created a moment that everyone in the room would remember. The Admiral continued, now more confident in his words. "Your achievements as a SEAL sniper are impressive. I should have recognized your rank and expertise immediately, and I want to make it clear that I deeply respect what you've accomplished. Thank you for your service and dedication." Sarah's eyes met his for a moment, and though she did not respond with a long speech, her posture and expression conveyed understanding and mutual respect. In her calmness, she communicated that she had no need for validation. The acknowledgement itself, however, was appreciated and meaningful. It was a rare moment of connection, a brief but powerful exchange that reflected both the Admiral's humility and Sarah's quiet strength. The officers who had been observing the interaction began to shift in their own attitudes. They saw a powerful demonstration of respect between two highly trained individuals, one of whom had just reminded everyone that authority comes from skill, experience, and integrity, not assumptions or appearances. Whispers circulated quietly, not out of gossip, but out of admiration. Many officers realized that moments like this were rare, when someone earned recognition purely through their accomplishments, and a leader acknowledged it sincerely in front of others. For the Admiral, the experience was transformative. He reflected on how easy it is to make assumptions and underestimate someone based on a brief glance or preconceived notions. Sarah's quiet demeanor, combined with her extraordinary achievements, had forced him to confront his own biases. He realized that part of being a great leader was not just commanding respect, but also recognizing and honoring the expertise of those around him, regardless of rank, gender, or appearance. Sarah, meanwhile, returned her attention to the briefing, her calm focus reminding everyone that action and competence always speak louder than words. The Admiral stepped back slightly, giving her space to lead herself without interference. He had offered his acknowledgement, corrected his earlier misjudgment, and allowed her the dignity of continuing her work uninterrupted. It was a demonstration of mutual respect that reinforced the culture of professionalism and excellence within the room. By the end of the exchange, the lesson was clear to all present. Respect is earned through competence and integrity. Assumptions can mislead even the most experienced leaders, and humility in leadership is a strength, not a weakness. Sarah's calm acceptance of the Admiral's acknowledgement, combined with his sincere recognition, created a moment that transcended the ordinary dynamics of rank and ceremony. It was a lesson in character, leadership, and the silent power of earned authority. A lesson that would linger in the minds of every officer present long after the briefing concluded. After the Admiral had formally acknowledged Sarah, a noticeable shift began to ripple through the entire room. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, with officers exchanging quiet glances, but soon it became clear that everyone was reassessing the woman they had just observed. Sarah, who had quietly taken her seat and returned her focus to the briefing materials, had unknowingly become the center of attention, not because she demanded it, but because her presence, experience, and calm authority naturally commanded it. The other officers, some of whom had previously overlooked her, now began to recognize the meaning of the sniper tattoo and the weight it carried. It was not just a piece of body art. It was a symbol of skill, discipline, and accomplishment earned over years of intense training and dangerous missions. In the military, especially within elite units like the SEALs, such a symbol spoke louder than words ever could. It told of countless hours in the field, of precision under pressure, of courage in the face of danger, and of leadership that could save lives in critical moments. As realization dawned on them, respect began to grow quietly, organically, throughout the room. Some of the younger officers, who had initially dismissed her as a junior or supporting staff member, now leaned forward slightly, listening more intently. Their previous assumptions were replaced with curiosity and admiration. Here was someone whose experience could teach them lessons they had yet to learn. The quiet authority Sarah carried was magnetic. It drew attention not through loudness or arrogance, but through competence and calm confidence. Everyone in the room could sense that she had achieved something exceptional, something that few could claim. The Admiral, observing the subtle reactions of the officers around him, understood the ripple effect of his own acknowledgement. By recognizing Sarah's expertise and skill, he had indirectly signaled to the entire room that she was someone deserving of respect. Officers who might have continued underestimating her now began to show it naturally through their posture, attention, and the way they addressed her. Salutes, once automatic and mechanical in nature, were now carried out with genuine recognition. Whispers of admiration began to circulate quietly among the staff. The message was clear. This was a professional who had earned her authority and whose accomplishments could not be ignored. Sarah, however, remained focused on her work. She did not rise to accept special attention, nor did she acknowledge the newfound respect overtly. Her eyes scanned the briefing documents, her mind analyzing strategies, potential obstacles, and solutions. To her, competence and preparation mattered far more than recognition. But even in her calm dedication to her duties, her authority and skill radiated outward. The officers around her could sense it, even without direct interaction. Her quiet demeanor became a testament to the fact that true leadership does not need to be loud, it needs to be effective. The impact of this recognition went beyond the immediate room. Many officers had served alongside men and women of remarkable skill, but it was rare to witness a moment where acknowledgement of authority was so clearly deserved and so powerfully delivered. Sarah's presence, combined with the Admiral's formal acknowledgement, set a new tone in the room. Conversations became more focused, instructions were taken more seriously, and younger officers began to study her not as a peer or subordinate, but as someone from whom they could learn valuable lessons. She had become a silent teacher, demonstrating the quiet power of skill, discipline, and earned respect. As the briefing progressed, officers began to subtly interact with her differently. Questions directed toward her were more attentive, suggestions were met with thoughtful consideration, and her advice was taken seriously without challenge. The atmosphere in the room had shifted from casual professional discourse to one where expertise and experience were deeply valued. Sarah's calm authority had transformed the dynamic. She was no longer just another officer in the room. She had become a figure of respect and admiration. Even the Admiral continued to watch her, this time not with surprise, but with genuine appreciation for the impact she was having on those around her. He could see how easily she commanded respect without needing to assert herself overtly, how effortlessly her experience influenced the tone and focus of the room. For a man of his rank, this was a powerful reminder that leadership is as much about influence and example as it is about authority and rank. Sarah, aware of the subtle changes in the room but undistracted by them, continued her work methodically. She reviewed operational charts, analyzed possible scenarios, and made mental notes on how to optimize team performance. Yet, even in her quiet diligence, the officers around her were learning from her example. They observed her composure under scrutiny, her ability to remain calm while commanding silent respect, and her focus on task over recognition. In this, they were witnessing not only skill but true leadership, something that textbooks and lectures could never fully convey. By the time the briefing ended, Sarah had left a lasting impression on the entire room. The officers who had initially underestimated her had learned an important lesson in humility, respect, and the quiet power of earned authority. They now understood that rank and outward appearances are not always the most accurate indicators of capability. Experience, skill, and composure often speak louder than any badge, and Sarah had embodied that principle perfectly. As the officers filed out of the room, many glanced at her with a newfound sense of respect. Some exchanged quiet remarks, acknowledging what they had just witnessed. Sarah, however, remained as composed as ever, collecting her materials and preparing to leave. She did not seek accolades or acknowledgement. Her work and her reputation spoke for themselves. Yet, the respect she had earned in that room would linger long after she left, a quiet but powerful testament to the authority of true skill and dedication. With the initial tension eased and respect firmly established, the briefing moved into its operational phase. Sarah, having already commanded the silent attention of the room through her presence and the subtle authority of her sniper tattoo, now had the opportunity to contribute her expertise. Unlike many officers who might have hesitated to speak up in front of higher-ranking officials, Sarah's confidence was grounded not in arrogance but in experience. She understood the value of knowledge and precision, and when she spoke, it carried weight. Her first contribution came as a suggestion on strategy. She pointed out potential vulnerabilities in a proposed operational plan, not in a critical or confrontational tone, but with clarity and focus. If the team advances from the east flank without covering the northern approach, we could risk exposure, she said calmly, pointing to a section of the tactical map. Her voice was steady, her words deliberate. There was no need for embellishment. The clarity and precision of her analysis were enough to command attention. Officers around her nodded, some quietly jotting down notes, others exchanging brief glances to acknowledge her insight. Even the Admiral, who had initially underestimated her, leaned forward slightly, listening intently. Her reputation as a skilled SEAL sniper had already set high expectations, but her ability to assess operational risks with practical, actionable advice confirmed the depth of her experience. She was not just respected because of her past achievements. She was demonstrating that her expertise was current, relevant, and directly applicable. As the discussion continued, Sarah's guidance became a central point of focus. She walked through the tactical plan step by step, highlighting areas where adjustments could improve team safety and operational success. Her insights were not theoretical, they were drawn from real-world experience. Every suggestion she made reflected countless hours of training, missions conducted under high stakes, and a deep understanding of team dynamics. For younger officers, watching her analyze and guide the discussion was like witnessing a master at work. They were learning in real time how to approach problems methodically, assess risks critically, and communicate solutions clearly. The room became quiet in the best sense of the word. People listened not out of obligation, but because her advice mattered. Sarah spoke with authority grounded in competence, and that made her influence tangible. She didn't dominate conversations or assert herself for attention. She simply offered the perspective that was most valuable, and others naturally followed her lead. The effect was subtle but powerful. The energy in the room shifted from casual participation to focused collaboration. Officers who had been tentative at the beginning of the briefing now engaged more actively, asking clarifying questions and considering her suggestions seriously. At one point, a junior officer hesitated before proposing an alternate plan. Sarah gave a small nod of encouragement. "Consider the environmental factors as well," she said gently. "Like the wind direction and visibility at different times of day, it could affect precision in key areas." Her words were simple but effective, guiding the team without diminishing anyone's input. This demonstrated another layer of her leadership. She knew how to share knowledge without overshadowing others, fostering both respect and collaboration. The Admiral watched carefully. He realized that Sarah's influence was shaping the way the entire team approached problem-solving. Her calm, methodical approach encouraged critical thinking and accountability, and it was clear that the room was learning from her in ways that went beyond the immediate operational discussion. For him, it was a lesson in leadership as much as it was a demonstration of skill. By listening and responding to her insights, the team was becoming more cohesive and more capable, a direct reflection of Sarah's quiet guidance. Sarah continued her contributions throughout the briefing. She offered advice on team coordination, emphasizing communication and timing during complex operations. She discussed contingency plans, highlighting potential risks and suggesting practical solutions. Every recommendation was delivered with precision, clarity, and humility. She never sought praise, yet the room could sense her experience and authority in every word. It was a living demonstration of leadership earned through competence, not rank or appearance. The younger officers, inspired by her approach, began to pay closer attention to details they might have overlooked. They asked questions, sought clarification, and mentally noted her methods for their own future missions. In essence, Sarah was mentoring the team without formally taking on that role. Her presence alone was an educational experience, showing that true leadership involves guiding others, sharing knowledge, and encouraging excellence without demanding recognition. Even the Admiral, who had initially made a casual joke at her expense, now nodded with visible appreciation as she spoke. He could see the immediate impact of her guidance. The room was more focused, more efficient, and more strategic in its thinking. Her expertise had elevated the discussion, turning it into a true collaborative effort where every decision was informed, considered, and precise. The respect she had earned through her achievements and quiet authority was now reinforced by her active contributions. By the end of the briefing, Sarah had not only demonstrated her tactical expertise, but also taught an invaluable lesson in leadership, influence, and mentorship. The team left the room better prepared, more confident, and more aware of the importance of listening to those with experience. Sarah's impact had been subtle yet profound. She had shown that true authority comes from knowledge, skill, and composure, and that leadership is as much about guiding others as it is about personal achievement. Even as she gathered her notes and prepared to leave, the officers in the room remained quietly aware of her presence and influence. They had witnessed something rare. A professional who could command respect without demanding it, teach without lecturing, and lead without overt assertion. Sarah's quiet guidance had transformed the briefing into a learning experience, leaving a lasting impression that would resonate with everyone present long after the meeting ended. As the briefing came to a close, the room buzzed with quiet activity. Officers were packing up their notes, exchanging brief remarks, and preparing to leave for their next tasks. Sarah, however, remained calm and composed, methodically collecting her materials and ensuring that everything she had been using was organized and accounted for. She moved with the same quiet confidence that had marked her presence throughout the day, a calm that subtly reminded everyone around her of her experience and authority. There was no rush, no unnecessary display, just focused professionalism. The impact of her presence during the briefing lingered in the minds of the officers. They had observed her not only as a skilled SEAL sniper but also as a natural leader, someone who could guide a team through complex scenarios with intelligence, patience, and composure. Younger officers whispered among themselves, reflecting on the advice she had given and the way she had delivered it with authority yet humility. It was clear that she had left a lasting impression, one that would shape how they approached their work in the future. Even Admiral Thompson, who had initially underestimated her, followed her with his eyes as she moved through the room. His earlier playful arrogance had been replaced by genuine respect and admiration. The lesson had been profound. True skill and authority are not always immediately visible, and assumptions based on appearance or gender can be dangerously misleading. He recognized that he had been humbled in the most respectful way possible, by witnessing the quiet power of expertise and composure in action. Sarah's movements were deliberate but unassuming. She nodded politely to officers she passed, acknowledging their presence without seeking attention. Her sniper tattoo, a symbol of her hard-earned experience, was visible as she adjusted her sleeve, a reminder to those who understood its meaning of the extraordinary career behind it. To the officers around her, it was a symbol that demanded respect. For Sarah, it was simply a mark of her journey, a silent testament to the training, discipline, and missions that had shaped her. As she prepared to leave the briefing room, Sarah's mind was already moving ahead. She considered the operational plans discussed, mentally noting areas that might need further review and strategies she might refine. Her focus was never on recognition. Her focus was always on readiness, precision, and effectiveness. Yet, despite her humility, the ripple effect of her presence was unmistakable. Officers who had once underestimated her now regarded her with quiet awe, their respect deepened by her skill, composure, and professionalism. The Admiral, sensing the conclusion of her participation, stepped forward for a final acknowledgement. "Thank you, Sarah," he said sincerely, his voice carrying genuine respect. "Your insights today have been invaluable. You've reminded us all that experience, skill, and quiet authority are the foundations of true leadership." Sarah nodded subtly, offering a small, respectful smile. She didn't linger for praise. Her work, and the knowledge she had shared, spoke for her far more effectively than words ever could. Officers around the room took note of this interaction. It was a rare moment, witnessing a senior officer openly recognize the contribution and expertise of someone whose abilities had not been fully appreciated at first glance. The Admiral's acknowledgement reinforced the lesson that competence, earned through effort and experience, is more important than rank, assumption, or outward appearances. Sarah's quiet confidence and methodical approach had transformed a room full of professionals, teaching a lesson in respect and humility that went beyond any formal training. As she walked toward the exit of the briefing room, a few officers instinctively straightened their posture, their actions a subtle sign of respect. Some exchanged quiet remarks about the remarkable skills and leadership qualities she had demonstrated. The atmosphere was charged with a newfound awareness. Here was someone whose accomplishments and presence demanded acknowledgement, not through force or words, but through consistent, quiet authority. Once outside the room, Sarah moved through the corridors of the naval base with the same calm assurance she had carried all day. The activity around her continued, officers and personnel performing their tasks, vehicles moving equipment, and the hum of operational efficiency filling the air. But her presence remained quietly commanding. Even without directly engaging with others, she left an impression simply through the way she carried herself. Focused, disciplined, and composed. As she reached the gates to leave, the Admiral watched from a distance, reflecting on the lessons of the day. He thought about the dangers of assumptions, the importance of recognizing skill and experience, and the value of humility in leadership. Sarah had not just contributed to the briefing. She had left a lasting impact on everyone who had witnessed her expertise, composure, and professionalism. Her presence had reinforced the principle that respect is earned, and that true leadership is demonstrated through action, guidance, and integrity. For Sarah, the day ended as quietly as it had begun. She had arrived to fulfill her role, participated with focus and skill, and left without fanfare or need for acknowledgement. Yet her impact was profound. Officers had seen firsthand the power of competence and quiet authority, and the Admiral had learned an unforgettable lesson in humility. The sniper tattoo on her arm, once unnoticed, now stood as a silent symbol of achievement, resilience, and expertise, a mark of a career defined by skill and dedication rather than appearances. Even as the base continued its operations and the officers dispersed to their duties, the lesson Sarah imparted lingered. It was a reminder that true excellence often goes unnoticed until recognized, that respect is earned through effort and skill, and that humility paired with capability leaves a far greater impression than any display of rank alone. Sarah's quiet authority had transformed a room full of seasoned professionals, leaving a legacy that would influence their understanding of leadership, respect, and competence long after she had departed.